Well, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. What would a hashtag sports episode be without all the technical difficulties? As I was saying, I'm lucky enough to have Ryan Lasal of ROC Sports Network here. He's going to be giving us our day one camp breakdown. If you can see scrolling below, you can find him at Ryan Lasal _ RSN for all the latest updates. Ryan, really glad to have you on tonight. I couldn't attend camp day one. You're going to be there for the duration of camp. So, day one, everyone wants to know, all the Bills fans want to know, what was your take overall of the first day of Bills camp?
Well, first, I just want to let you know I had to get in my car because if I'm going to be on hashtag sports on the Sunday drive, I got to be in my car. So I wanted to get that out of the way for everybody. So, yeah. So first day of camp, I thought was, honestly, my biggest takeaway is there was less uncertainty in camp than I thought there was going to be today. We're going to talk a little bit about a couple of specific position groups, offensive line, the wide receiver position. Not a lot of variety within those two position groups. And those really kind of were two position groups that we thought were going to be some battles this year. And obviously there's a lot of camp to go. This was only the first day, but very little rotation within those two groups, specifically within the first team. Which is a surprising takeaway for me, especially for McDermott, who has built Bills camp over the past couple of years around competition and around the fact that, everyone is fighting for playing time on the field. So, the biggest takeaway was, I think, confidence in this team and kind of the direction that they're going. Not a lot of mistakes today. There was Josh Allen threw a pick that was a tip ball. So, obviously it tries to fit into a tight window. Not a ton of you can do about that. Yeah. One false start in Dawson Knox, and he took a down and back as a result of that. But, not a lot of mistakes from this team. And that's something that you don't often see early on in training camp from the Buffalo Bills. So I think a lot of confidence, specifically amongst the media on the sidelines and, amongst a couple of the people that I've talked to, Sal Capaccio and, my partner in crime, Icy Vic, just confidence. And it seems like this team is moving in a positive direction, which is a good thing, specifically the first day of camp.
Absolutely. I think one of the takeaways that I got from reading, because like I said, I couldn't be there. A lot of people were there. You were there as well. Was the fact that there's not really a question mark going on with the quarterback position. Allen looks sharp. People were reporting that he had some really good throws in the red zone, which was not really his forte. He started to throw the short ball a little bit better. What was your takeaway as far as Josh Allen's performance today, day one, coming into camp in his second year?
Well, Josh Allen looked like a guy that's ready to take a step this season. Quite honestly, you came into camp last year and obviously it was, kind of an open battle for the quarterback position. Not the case this year. And Sean McDermott said it in as much in his pre-practice press conference where he said, the other 90 guys on this roster know that this is Josh Allen's team and he is the starting quarterback. And, he played like a starting quarterback today, and he played like a guy who was confident in the offense he was running. He played like a guy who had worked in the offseason on things that he knew he needed to work on, specifically those short and intermediate routes. He threw those very well today. He had, again, one miscue, which was he tried to force a ball into some triple coverage. It got tipped. Micah Hyde capitalized and picked it off and went the other way with it. Outside of that, Josh Allen had a very, very sharp day. I think he had maybe 2 or 3 incompletions that I can think of. And one was, really kind of a jump ball situation that he threw up to Dawson Knox. And, I thought Knox kind of fell away from the ball a little bit. I think if he goes and attacks that, he gets up and over Milano and Poyer and maybe comes down with that. And then there were 2 throws that I think Allen wanted back that he had Cole Beasley, both for touchdowns, kind of in a flat scenario. If he gets those back, and those are both touchdowns, but those are the balls, the ones just off the fingertips of Cole Beasley that would have been either in the dirt or well over Beasley's head last season. And Allen's dialing it in. One of the things that I took away and Icy mentioned to me during the throws, it looks like Allen's putting some touch on those intermediate and short passes, which you didn't see a lot of last year. And if he starts to put touch on balls, I think, teams are going to have to be very worried because he's already got a huge arm. And if he can start putting some touch on balls, he's going to become a very dangerous weapon in that pocket.
Now, what gets lost in the mix here, and this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen a lot during training camp, and you've seen it over a number of years. You mentioned names like Poyer, Hyde, Milano, ones going against ones. With the projection of how good this defense is supposed to be, does it amplify the things that Josh Allen was able to do day one in camp against a very formidable defense? That, I mean, going against this defense every day in camp's got to help him throughout the rest of the year, right? If this defense is projected to be so good, that has to be, even a more telling sign for Josh Allen, hadn't it be?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Josh Allen, that offense, specifically in the 7-on-7 drills and in the goal line situations, they won today against that defense. And that defense, I mean, they played well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds was swarming. Poyer had a couple of tight coverage situations. Milano did really well against the backs and tight ends. Trey White was Trey White. EJ Gaines came up with a pick, in the second unit against Barkley. So the defense was sharp, but the offense won the day. I mean, Josh Allen at one point in 7-on-7s had 3 touchdowns back to back to back. One was just a bullet to Dawson Knox in the flats. A little bit of a debate in terms of whether he caught it. I had a pretty good angle at it. I'm pretty confident that he did catch it. A lot of the media will say he dropped it, but I had a good angle at that one. Then he hit Zay Jones in the back of the end zone, and he had a beautiful touch pass in the back corner to John Brown. And the interesting thing about Brown that I was surprised about today, how much separation he was able to get off the line of scrimmage. It's one of the things that you knew. He's good at going downfield and stretching the field, and he's good in space. The problem is, can he get space? And, man, he did a great job of finding a lot of space to work. Him and Beasley were just eating up the defense today. So I think it does do a lot for Josh Allen's confidence. This is one of the better defensive units in football, and they've only gotten better by adding a player in Ed Oliver, adding a couple of pass rushers, to this team, and Eli Harold, and, adding corners opposite of Trey White to battle for that position. So this is a defense that has gotten better personnel-wise, and Josh Allen doing what he did on day one can only lead to a lot of confidence from Bills fans, but more importantly from the coaching staff.
Absolutely. And keep with that theme, Ryan, I wanted to talk about, you talked about the 7-on-7s, you talked about the wide receivers doing their thing today, John Brown being one of those. This offense really will go only as far as the offensive line will take it. You got a lot of new faces in camp. You got a lot of guys who have to try to get in there. You had reported earlier in the day of the starting 5 that went in. Yep. It was Dawkins, Spain, Morse, Feliciano, and Ford. And did that seem like, okay, this is the line they're going to go with? Or did you see someone on the second and third team that happened to outshine another one? Or what was your takeaway from this revamped line and the new offensive line coach that came in, and how the mood changed from last year to this year?
Yeah, I mean, I tell you, I think they're going to roll with this 5 until they're given a reason not to. They did very little rotation. Ty Nsekhe came in a little bit to spell Cody Ford at the right tackle position. You had Spencer Long, who worked in a little bit at the right guard position. Other than that, there was not much rotation within that first unit. Obviously, Deion Dawkins and Mitch Morse, you can pencil them in on where they're going to be come the start of the season. And it's one of the things I got a chance to talk to Sal Capaccio about a little bit on the sideline, was how much of a surprise it was that they kind of trotted this 5 out. And that's what the 5 was throughout the time in camp. Very little rotation. I think one of the things that you have to be conscious of as an offensive unit is that continuity on the offensive line and how important that is. And I think they're going to give this unit a reason, every opportunity to gel together these 5 guys and be the 5 guys. The only concern that I saw was at the left guard position. There were a couple of instances where I thought that Quentin Spain lost his man, but keep in mind, that's the Jerry Hughes side. That's Tremaine Edmonds loves to come off of that side. So, that's a tall task on the left side of that offensive line for the Buffalo Bills against the right side of that Bills defense. And Lorenzo Alexander obviously plays over there. So, it's a tall task. I think Spain, if someone's going to lose their job and give someone else an opportunity, Spain might be the first guy to crack there. But he's going to get every opportunity to prove that he deserves that left guard position. Again, very, very little rotation today, which was a surprise to me. I thought you'd see a lot of bodies flowing in and out of that first unit offensive line, but not the case. And that was, a bit of a surprise, but I think it lets Josh Allen be comfortable with the guys in front of him. I'll tell you what, there wasn't a single snap that Josh Allen took that wasn't from Mitch Morse, which I think was another undersold moment in today. They didn't work anybody else in at the center position with Josh Allen. Josh Allen took all the snaps from Morse, and they're going to let Morse be the captain of that offensive line, which I think is the right move.
Yeah, a couple of people were talking about the familiarity that Feliciano has with the offensive line coach. Obviously, coming there, a lot of these coaches, they like to go with guys they know initially to try to, cement a starting position or just kind of pave the way for a younger guy. We got some comments in the live YouTube chat. Eye of the moment. Maybe you could speak to this as well, Ryan. He said, "What's up with Ed Oliver? Why did McDermott say he had a long way to go? Did he not study the playbook, or is he not listening to coaches, or what? What did you see on the? If we could just shift really quick to the defensive side of the ball as far as Ed Oliver goes, and is this one of those scenarios where the defense is really strong? McDermott's going to stick to his credo, which is you have to earn your spot if you're a rookie, or unless it's a position of need. Trey White he came in, he was day one starter. Tremaine Edmonds came in, he was day one starter. It seems like Cody Ford for day one starter. What is this? Is he using that as kind of motivation, or did you see things that was going on with Oliver that worried you today as far as that question was?
Well, I think let's temper expectations for fans when it comes to Ed Oliver. There's a couple of things. You mentioned these rookies who came in and were impactful right away. Trey White, Tremaine Edmonds, Cody Ford. These guys are all from Power 5 conferences, right? Ed Oliver's not. Ed Oliver's not used to this type of top echelon competition. That's the first thing. B, Ed Oliver was primarily a nose tackle in Houston because that defense called for their most athletic defensive lineman to play the nose tackle position. He's now shifting over to play defensive tackle. That's a little bit of a change in position for him, doing some little bit different things than what he's used to doing, right? So that's kind of the second thing. The third thing is that the biggest knock on him coming into the draft was his size. He's a little bit undersized to play that defensive tackle position. So he's going to have to learn some techniques because he's not going to be the most athletic guy on the field like he was in Houston. So, there's some things that I think when McDermott says he's got a long way to go, he's got a long way to go because he's trying to play up to competition. He's getting used to playing against these professional athletes and these guys that, he's not just going to be able to throw around or run around, because everyone is a great athlete in the NFL. And when you're playing in Houston, you're playing in a non-Power 5 conference, you're a man among boys. And that's what Ed Oliver was in college. So he's going to have to learn. And he's got two very good guys to learn from in Harrison Phillips, Star Lotulelei, who can play that defensive tackle position and can teach him a lot of that technique because neither one of those guys is the most athletic guy in the world, right? So they're going to be able to show him those techniques, and if he can apply the techniques along with his athleticism and learn from Leslie Frazier, learn from Sean McDermott, he's going to be a force, but he's going to take some time. And I think fans need to understand that defensive tackle typically is not a position you come right in and immediately make an impact. Marcel Darius's don't come along every day. And I think it's worth noting that when it comes to Ed Oliver. But the Bills are set at that defensive tackle position for right now. They've got, again, Star Lotulelei, who's going to be the starter at one position, and they've got the Phillips squared there in Jordan and so in the two Phillips players. So they're okay right now. They don't necessarily need Ed Oliver to be an impact player, but he does have a long way to go. And it's just the fact that, again, he's young. He's a player who needs to kind of get his weight up. He needs to get his strength up a little bit. He needs to learn a lot of techniques, and that's going to take some time, but they're working him in as much as they can. And I think they're going to give him every opportunity to be successful, but fans just need to, be patient with him. And I think he'll come along. I mean, he's clearly an athlete. He's clearly, a large mass of humanity, which typically translates well to the defensive tackle position. He's just need some time.
Yeah, flipping back and forth. If you talk about the offensive line versus the defensive line, obviously, and the defensive line, they play such a rotational front, and guys are only playing 55, 60% of the snaps at most. He's going to see his snaps. He's going to see his work. And like you said before, the things that we were concerned about with Ed Oliver, his weight, playing, he was a man amongst boys in the division that he was playing in. I think people got a little bit carried away with all of the John Randall Aaron Donald comparisons that he was just going to come in day one and start throwing Mitch Morse around. He's going to start throwing Quentin Spann around. I mean, that's not how it works. I like the fact that the Bills are so deep at the defensive tackle position, and they're able to develop a little bit more continuity than they'd had last year as far as the run game is concerned. Obviously, it's the first day of camp. It hasn't been a preseason game yet. It hasn't been anything of that nature. But you're able to see, the foundation and building blocks starting to get built as far as this defense goes. Listen, we got a top-notch defense over here. You're not going to make it unless you play up to this level. Flipping sides as far as the offensive line goes, listen, we gotta gel. We have to be very, very. We got to communicate across this whole line. Mitch Morse has to be the quarterback of that line. He needs to get everybody in the right positions where they need to go. So Josh Allen has the time that he needs to find these receivers. And if I could just for a minute go back to the wide receiver position, you talked about a little bit about John Brown and what he was able to accomplish today. What did you see? I heard a lot of people were kind of making a big deal about, it was Zay Jones was on the outside. I know we've talked a couple of years about Zay Jones playing on the outside. Did you see Jones move down the slot at all, or was he just primarily an outside receiver? Because we've talked at length about he's 10 times better player in the slot than he is on the outside. What did you see today in camp from Zay Jones?
He was primarily an outside receiver. I think they're going to work him there. It was John Brown on one side, Zay Jones on the other, and it was Cole Beasley in the slot. And I think that's the three that they're going to roll with, at least to start the season. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the starting three when the first play from scrimmage gets snapped, come to week one. Zay Jones worked the outside. I thought he did a good job, primarily matched up against Trey White, which says a lot about the confidence that team has in him because, Trey is typically going to follow around the best receiver week to week. So, Zay Jones drew that coverage. They had a couple of nice catches, I thought. Again, he had a touchdown in the back of the end zone against 7-on-7 where he kind of got a little bit loose and they lost him in the shuffle a little bit, and he crossed and made a beautiful catch. So, they're going to let Zay Jones work the outside because, what's the alternative? You've got Cole Beasley in the slot. You can't bump Beasley on the outside. You've got Foster you could bring in to play the outside, but you've got two very similar skill sets between him and John Brown then playing on the outside against on either side of each other. So I think Zay Jones brings a little bit of variety to that position opposite John Brown. He'll be able to take advantage of Brown getting deep and kind of taking that safety out of the equation because they're going to have to account for his speed. But I think they're going to let Jones work that outside and try to prove that he deserves to play there. But right now, that was the surprise of the day, I thought, was the lack of rotation for Robert Foster. He was primarily with the twos. A lot of what you saw was, again, John Brown, Zay Jones, Cole Beasley. You saw a little bit of Andre Roberts, and you saw a little bit of Ray McLeod. So, right now, I think your six wide receivers, if you had to start the season today, Brown, Jones, Beasley, Foster, Roberts, and probably McLeod or McKenzie. And I think McLeod might have the inside track because, again, keep in mind, he was a guy that this team drafted last year, and he had some injury concerns, which is really why he didn't see the field a lot last year. So I think those are your six. If you're going to roll with six, again, if the season started today, everyone else is kind of.
Well, he's from Clemson. That's where the injury concerns come in. He's from Clemson. That always happens.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you look at the Clemson history, they don't have a great history of keeping their wide receivers healthy and really a lot of their players healthy. So
now we got a couple of questions in the chat talking about Sills. What about Williams? But we'll get to that in 1 second. I just wanted to talk briefly about, could you see this type of rotation early, day one in camp? Beasley wasn't here last year. Brown wasn't here last year. Let them work with the ones as much as they can to try to develop continuity. Jones was primarily a slot guy. He's moving to the outside. Let's get him some work on the outside. Foster, this is now his third year. If you want to count it, this is his third year in a Brian Daboll offense. So they're like, you got it. We'll put you with the twos. You know what you're doing. We won't have to worry about you and all this other stuff. And as well as you said, from a business standpoint, they have Ray McLeod on a controllable contract for 4 years because they drafted him. McKenzie they picked up. They have him they have him for almost that amount of time being a restricted free agent, unrestricted free, and whatnot. And Paul's usually the guy that goes through all of those, and I'll let Paul, explain that in the chat. But that being said, do you think that could have been the reason for the rotation today? As those, oh, we're moving Jones outside. These two new guys are coming in that we signed in free agency. Let's get them the most work with the ones and try to see what we have before we start mixing it up into 4 wide, 5 wide.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, Mario. I think there's something to that, but I also got the very distinct impression that this coaching staff is not interested in giving guys time to learn this season. I feel like there's a lot of sense of urgency and a sense of pressure amongst this coaching staff. So this isn't a learning opportunity, right? This isn't a new offense for the majority of these players. This isn't a new situation for a lot of these guys. I think that the 11 that you saw play, you talk about 15 guys total kind of got runs with the ones when you start adding in the running backs. That's probably going to be your 15 to 16 guys that you're going to see get quite a lot of time until somebody proves that they deserve to get a couple extra snaps out of that second group, or until one of these guys either goes down with injury or makes a mistake that gets him in the doghouse. But I don't get the sense that McDermott's going to give too much time for a learning curve in these practices. So I think the reason you saw John Brown and Cole Beasley get a lot of runs with Josh Allen is because they're going to see a lot of runs with Josh Allen come season, and they want to make sure that they build that continuity with Josh Allen. So, they don't have too much of a, Robert Foster played one season with Josh Allen, and it's essentially 7 games that Robert Foster played really well. Zay Jones played 13 games. So they don't have a lot of a head start against John Brown and Cole Beasley. So, I think there might be something to that, getting those veterans to run a little bit. But again, I don't get the sense that this is, something where these guys are going to be given a lot of time to work in and, 5 snaps a day here and there. You're going to have to earn your spot, with hard-nosed football. And I think it's going to be tough to unseat those 3 wide receivers that we talked about earlier as the starters, because they played well today. And if they keep it up, they're not going to give anybody the opportunity to seize that job.
Now, that being said, we move over to a lot of people in the chat are talking about Sills and Williams. Not a lot of run today, as you're that you're letting us know from day one of Bills camp.
Yep.
I heard that Sills had a couple nice catches, really, really good catches. What do you see for him and Williams as far as trying to crack not only the top 53, but actually making the Bills roster as far as as practice squad players?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Mario. If Sills had nice catches today, I missed them because I saw maybe 3 or 4 snaps where he actually got to run a route.
Okay.
From him today. I mean, he's a guy that I think he's on the outside looking in, and I think there's quite a few bodies ahead of Sills to make this roster. Sills is probably a guy that they're going to try to sneak onto the practice squad. He's raw, you can tell. I mean, body size. Listen, he's a big guy. I mean, he's a tall receiver. He's a big wide receiver, but he plays like a guy who hasn't played the position for very long. Keep in mind, he joined West Virginia originally as a quarterback. He moved to the wide receiver position. And when he played in that offense in West Virginia, he didn't really need to do a lot to get off the line and to get open. Not the case in the NFL anymore. He's going to have to learn how to play the wide receiver position. He's going to take some time. So for all those, all of the Sills fans out there, he's not going to be this year's Brandon Riley. He's not going to do a ton in training camp to try to make a case for a roster spot. He's going to have to earn his time with Tyree Jackson at the quarterback position, which is going to be a tough task. And he's going to have to be a guy that proves not that he's worth a roster spot. He's going to have to prove that he's worth a practice squad spot. And I think that's going to be something that it's going to be worth watching. Duke Williams, again, he's another guy who's on the outside looking in, and I'm not sure he's even fighting for a practice squad spot at this point because of his age and because of how long he's been playing the game of football. I think this is kind of a do or die situation for Duke Williams. And if that's the case, he needs to be really worried about what happened today, because where Sills got very few runs, Williams got fewer. So I think those are 2 guys that probably, again, might be standing towards the end of the line when it comes to the wide receiver position.
All right. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here with Ryan Lasal of ROC Sports Network. As you can see on the screen, you can give him a follow on Twitter at Ryan Lasal _RSN. He's going to be at Bills camp throughout the duration of camp, giving you updates And if you guys are not on Twitter, you need to get on Twitter just to follow Ryan because his updates throughout camp are just amazing. I felt myself glued to my phone all day today, trying to hit the refresh button to see what was going on with Bills camp. I will be there tomorrow to join Ryan. I'll be on the outside of the fence. He will be inside talking to the players, but nonetheless, I'll try to give you some breakdowns tomorrow. Elliot Eisler from the YouTube from Hashtag Nation, he asked, "How did Singletary look?" We haven't talked about the running backs with this offense yet. Obviously, 7-on-7s, a lot of group work. Everyone's concerned about Allen and the wide receivers. How did this running back group look, and Singletary specifically?
Yeah, well, first, shout out to Hashtag Nation, Mario, because you just said go follow me on Twitter, and I had like 5 or 6 notifications just pop up on my phone. So appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoy me blowing up your timeline tomorrow when Bills camp gets rolling. But Singletary was pretty firmly the third running back today, behind Gore and behind McCoy. I thought he looked good for a rookie. I thought, he had a couple of nice runs. He had a swing pass that he caught out of the backfield. He's as advertised. He's a player that can kind of do it all. He's very similar to, kind of a LaShawn McCoy type of player where he can run between the tackles. He can get outside if he needs to. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. So, I think Bills fans are going to be happy to see what he can bring when preseason games start to roll around. And I think right now he's pretty firmly the third running back. And TJ Yeldon is a guy, and we talk about these bubble players. He's a guy where he right now is maybe going to have to hope for either an injury ahead of him or that they decide to keep 4 running backs, because I think TJ Yeldon, again, had very few runs today, especially with that upper team when we talk about the first team and even second team. But Devin Singletary, I think, played fine for his first training camp practice. We'll see how he develops over the course of the next few weeks here. But Bills fans right now, I think, should be encouraged about what he's going to be able to bring to this team. And I think he's right now a sneaky play if you're playing fantasy football and, maybe a dynasty league or some type of a long-term redraft league, something like that. I think he's worth a decent play because his talent is eventually going to find him on the field. And he's shown that he can be productive.
Awesome, Ryan. What now? I just as we're going to try to wrap this up pretty soon. I know you got you're busy. You got the little kiddos trying to get to sleep. What are some of the things? Let's say if Hashtag Nation and even myself, because I'm asking this selfishly, I'm going to camp tomorrow. What are some things I should expect other than how amazing Josh Allen's arm is live? What are some things I should expect at camp? Going there, what I should take a look at, what I should see, because I specifically know what I want to take a look at. But if you're a fan, a lot of the fans that go to camp, what are some of the things that they should expect going to camp tomorrow?
Yeah, I think a couple things. The first thing that struck me today is that the intensity is already ratcheted up. Keep in mind, these guys aren't in pads yet. That won't happen until probably this weekend. But we already saw kind of a little bit of a I'll say it for you, Mario. It was a little bit of a kerfuffle that rose up today. It was Love coming off the left side again, matched up against Nasecki. Nasecki just reached up and grabbed his helmet and ripped it off his head in the middle of the play and threw it to the ground. And they exchanged a couple of words, and that kind of caught me off guard. It was like, man, this is like the 4th snap of 11, and here we are already, ripping each other's helmets off and stuff. So, and I think that comes from, again, there's a palpable tension when you're down on the sidelines this season as opposed to what other seasons have been. I feel like there's some stress there from the coaching staff. There's pressure on this team.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
I think I feel like they know they need to make the playoffs, or at least be one of the things I talked to Sal about on the sidelines today that I thought was really interesting, and him and I agreed. They need to be a team that comes the last 2 to 3 weeks of the season. They need to be in control of your own destiny mode, right? The team needs to be, if not a playoff team, they need to be in the hunt and controlling their own destiny come the end of the season. And I think anything below 9-7 is going to be a disappointment for this team this year, especially the way that they came out and played today, the talent they've added in the offseason. So I think fans take note of that, because there's definite tension and energy, and when things don't go their way, there's frustration. Josh Allen already showed frustration today when he missed Cole Beasley on 2 straight patterns. Beasley was frustrated. Allen was frustrated. So it's worth noting because it's something you don't always see out of Bills camp is that pressure and that expectation that they have around them. And it's definitely there this season. The other thing I'll say is if you want some fun and you want to watch the defense, Jerry Hughes and Tremaine Edmonds were flying all over the field today, and they are so fun to watch on defense. I actually tweeted out at one point, the best word that I could use to describe Jerry Hughes today at practice was disruptive. He was in the backfield constantly. They kind of had to stop blowing the whistle in terms of sacks because he was in the backfield so frequently on pass plays that they finally had to just run through it and just finish the pattern and finish the throws because Hughes was back there so often. And Tremaine Edmonds, there was a play that I remember specifically that LaShawn McCoy came off the left side. He had a wide open hole off the left side. And all of a sudden, Tremaine Edmonds just came just screaming through the hole. And if there were pads, I mean, LaShawn McCoy may have lost his shoulder pads and helmet in that play because Tremaine Edmonds keeps flying in through so fast. So, I mean, for fans, enjoy Allen because he's playing really well right now, but enjoy that defense too because they are playing really well. But again, the sense of energy and the expectation and the excitement that's at camp is something that I haven't experienced in probably the 4 years that I've been covering camp. This is the first year where there's legitimate excitement, tension, and pressure around this team, and it's a welcome change for me.
That's amazing. I just got a text message from Paul, and when you were talking about Jerry Hughes, was he going against Dawkins?
It was Dawkins in Spain. I mean, he was victimizing Dawkins in Spain today. Well, so there was one play where he somehow got lined up on Andre Roberts. Somehow Roberts wound up blocking him, and I leaned over to Icy and I said, that can't happen, man. I mean, you can't have Andre Roberts blocking Jerry Hughes. That's not good news for anybody. So, they've got to find better ways. If Dawkins is going to be left one-on-one with those ends and he performs the way he performed against Jerry Hughes, they're going to have to get him some help. So it'll be interesting to see what they do and if Jerry Hughes can continue that type of pressure. And really what that will ultimately do to the tension of the team, because at a certain point, if Jerry Hughes is continually going to be disruptive, it's going to impact the offense's ability to run plays, which builds the frustration on the offense and ultimately turns into those camp fights that we all love to see so much. So I'll be interested to see how long it takes before there's a legitimate brouhaha going on in camp, escalating from that kerfuffle that we saw today.
All you got to do is mention Donnybrook, and then we got a full trifecta.
Oh yeah, I mean, if it's a Donnybrook, I mean, you're talking about coaches being involved, so it's going to get crazy if that's the case, and we've seen that in a couple of past seasons at Bills camp, so don't be surprised.
Frazier will mix it up. I'm not worried about it.
Oh yeah, he will.
He doesn't care. Oh, Ryan, you know what? I can't thank you enough to come on Hashtag Sports tonight and give us your breakdown of day one at camp, and always look forward to your breakdowns. Hashtag Nation, if you're watching right now or if you watch this tomorrow, give Ryan a follow on Twitter. If you don't have a Twitter, get one at Ryan Lasal _RSN. He has some great updates throughout camp. It's he's very objective in his approach. He's not going to sugarcoat anything, and he gives you really, really, really good content. And if you guys, as Paul said in the live feed in the chat, he said, if you guys like Hashtag Sports, Ryan's right up our alley as far as humor and breakdowns and everything like that. So I can't thank him enough for his time tonight. And Hashtag Nation, he will be there. I will be there at camp tomorrow. Be sure to check us out. We'll give you day 2 breakdown. Hopefully Ryan will be able to join us as well for that. But for Ryan Lasal, I'm Mario Granata. This is Hashtag Sports. You guys take it easy. Have a good night.